Our next inductee, the late Floyd Farley. The award will be accepted by his grandson, Mark Estabrook. Remarks by Mark, but Floyd Farley.
When the popularity of golf exploded at the turn of the 21st century, the cost of green fees soared right alongside. There was high demand for high-dollar courses in private settings. However, such was not the case in the glory days of architect Floyd Farley. He catered to golfers who simply wanted to be able to learn the game, afford the game, and enjoy the game. Farley embraced the common man. He was about inclusion, not seclusion. He built economically, a vital ingredient to the growth of the game.
Floyd Farley has built some of the best golf courses that the average man can play. And I think that's an incredible legacy. And his golf courses were beautiful too.
Farley's humble courses could be maintained with humble budgets. A round on a Farley layout could be accomplished with a pleasant walk. There was no need for a turbocharged golf cart to reach your next destination.
He used the terrain wherever he was. He was a great designer and user of the land as he found it.
I loved his routings. They always flowed with the land. If a dog leg turned left or right, it was because that's the direction the ground flowed, so that you never were playing opposite or against the flow of the land.
Practicality reigned supreme with Farley. What you saw is what you got. All of that seems rather old-fashioned in this era of bombastic special effects layouts that vie for honors in Golf Digest and elsewhere, wrote Ron Whitten. And Whitten would know such things, given the fact that he is architecture editor emeritus of Golf Digest.
When I think of Floyd's designs, I just think of how graceful they are.
Farley's approach to architecture gave pace of play a fighting chance. Fewer traffic jams allowed time for more rounds to be played each day, and more customers meant more income to pay the bills.
He was the sort of architect that didn't worry about awards or glory. He was concerned with providing municipalities, both big and small, with courses that were easy to maintain, easy to operate, and could make money.
Kickingbird, probably his best that he did in Oklahoma anyway.
You know, many people aren't even aware, but we used to host the Oklahoma Open, and I think a testament to a good architect is that the best players that are playing in that tournament usually rise to the top. So when you look at the winners of the Oklahoma Open back from 79 to 85s, Doug Toole, Bob Tway, Dr. Gil Morgan, Tom Jones, Danny Edwards, those are the guys that were the best at that day, and they were winning the tournaments at Kickingbird Golf Club. So I think that's a testament to his designs as well.
I think Floyd's vision of how to build golf courses that were playable but also challenging is great.
First and foremost, Farley was a club professional and a talented golfer, winning the South Central PGA Section Championship in 1937 and 1942. He began as a caddy at age 12 and in 1925 played for Rosedale, one of the greatest high school squads in Kansas history. He also owned and operated some courses. These attributes worked hand in hand. Hundreds of thousands of golfers have learned the game on his designs.
Well, we wouldn't have the number of players that we do today without his golf courses having been built, because they created access up until the point he started building public courses. The game had largely been in the country clubs and the private courses. It would be lost if he did poor golf courses, but he did good golf courses.
He took pride in how he engineered courses and his attention to detail.
Worried about drainage in an era when a lot of golf architects didn't. It was pretty impressive to see a guy who really started out as a club professional teach himself the nuances of golf course architecture. That's sort of a lost art these days, and it's important to honor people like Floyd who did that.
The Oklahoma Golf Hall of Fame indeed now honors Floyd Farley, whose lifelong simple approach proved becoming a Hall of Famer doesn't have to be all that complicated.
Grandson Mark Estabrook. Congratulations.
How are we going to do this, John?
I should have taken speech class,
Right.
but I didn't.
How are we going to do this? I've got to go right.
Granddad
Just the way we did it
lived
2
to be
years ago,
98.
left and I'll just
He was born
Yeah.
in 1907.
Can you finish your work when you get there? Well, because all I do is write my numbers for PDP.
His father abandoned his wife, Floyd, and his sister when he was 9 years old. Anybody heard of Charlie Wiesner? Nobody? Charlie was my granddad's best friend as a child. At 9 years old, Charlie and Floyd would go to the rail yards in Kansas City and steal coal. To buy food. At age 12, he started to caddy. I don't think he was really interested in the game, but he was interested in making money. Back in those days in Kansas City, some of you may have read some history about the city, but it was heavily corrupted by the mob and the mayor. And Prohibition was in full swing. So locker rooms and golf courses all over the country were places for fellows to have a drink, and became a big business. And he had two guys in Kansas City who were mentors to him. One was a guy named Harry Robb, and these are names from the past, but I'm going to say them anyway. Harry used to work with the young people in Kansas City, and he really got him interested in golf. And my granddad was lucky enough to meet him. But prior to Harry was Jim Dalglish. Anybody heard that name before? He was a Scotsman, and he knew the game extremely well. He knew how to make and repair golf clubs, and he started teaching my granddad at the age of 12 how to do all that. Jim went on to build his own courses, owned and operated one of those courses, and he kind of took my granddad under his arm and was a major influence on him getting professionally involved in the game. He went to Rosedale High School, and Jug McSpaden was his 1925 teammate. And some of you may remember Jug. He lettered in football and basketball. He had a scholarship to college for football, but his last season he really injured his knee, and he decided he was going to devote his time to golf. He was also a diving competitor. I got to tell you, one of the things that my granddad taught me was learn how to spot an opportunity. And many of the men in this room know exactly what I'm talking about. It comes in the course, it comes in business, it comes at school. And my granddad always taught me to recognize people that have talents and get to know them. And many in this room know exactly what I'm talking about. So he was very much interested in going to college, but he couldn't go. And then when he was 19 years old, Jim talked him into joining the tour. He was still in high school. And he didn't think he would have a chance. He didn't have enough confidence, but he did exceptionally well. He designed golf courses starting as early as 1932, I believe, was the first one that was his published golf course. But he told me when he was in junior high, he was about 13 years old, he went into a farmer's field and asked the farmer if he could design 2 holes. So he did one par 3 in one direction and one par 3 in the other. And he said 20 or 25 years later, he went back there and it was still there. World War II came along. He was 36 years old when he got drafted. Those of you who have served know that's kind of old, especially in World War II. While he was on leave, they gave him a short release before they were supposed to go to gunnery school. He wrecked a car, and he was the driver. And he totaled the car, and he basically totaled his back. So they taped him to a board. If there's any doctors in the room, you know orthopedic surgery was not that advanced in the 1940s. So he spent 2 months taped to a board. And he thought his golf game was over, but after World War II, he went back on the tour, and he did well. He was assigned as a military policeman after the back injury. He didn't go with his unit to Europe, but Fergie did. And Fergie was his good friend. Fergie told me in the 1980s that he was in the Battle of the Bulge, Fergie was. And he found out that Floyd's unit was in nearby, near the Bulge. And so Fergie commandeered a Jeep and went looking for my granddad and didn't find him, and that's when he found out that he had been injured and he was back in the States. As part of that military police experience, he started out chasing deserters. And so he would go all over the United States trying to catch them. He'd do some investigative work. He'd talk to families and whatnot, and he'd find them and bring them back. After that assignment was over, they sent him to Fort Reno with German POWs. Now, the prison camp commander asked my granddad to experience sports with the German POWs in a way that showed him what Americans were made of. So my granddad didn't have much success because the Germans were excellent athletes. And it was tough to beat them in the swimming pool. It was tough to beat them in just about any sport except for one. He kicked their butt. And I understand that a lot of them either stayed in Oklahoma, in the Midwest area, got married, had families, and some of them went back to Germany and tried to create a golfing industry there. In 1966, I was 10 years old, and my granddad used to take me to courses while he was building them. It was a wonderful period of time for me to engage in that kind of experience with my grandfather. I didn't know anything about golf. I wanted to learn about it, but watching him do his daily activities out in the middle of forests and walking, these very disheveled pieces of land while earth movers were moving the trees. And my fascination at 10 years old was looking for arrowheads. And occasionally he would have a superintendent or engineer that would bring a burlap bag of arrowheads, and my granddad and I would sit down there in the dirt looking at all of them. My granddad was fascinated with Indian history in Oklahoma. It's true. The Lake of the Ozarks, at the Lake Valley course in 1966, it wasn't finished then, but they were laying out the stakes. And we got in a boat and went across the lake, and I think we'd been wandering around the woods looking for property lines for about 30 minutes. And the guy that was showing us around was, oh, I think this is over here, Floyd. This stake goes over here. That's that property line. And we're walking as this explanation is being given. And all of a sudden, I stop and I look up, and there's two guys from Deliverance. And they looked pretty angry. There still was in operation. They were cooking. And they each had a shotgun. And they were missing teeth. The good thing about it was my granddad had no desire to learn the moonshine business, and neither did the superintendent that was showing us around. And he said, "We'll see you fellas." My granddad said, We'll see you fellas. We're out of here. No problems." So we're getting in the boat, and the fellow that was showing him Lake Valley said, "Floyd, now next week, I'm getting the sheriff out here, and we're not going to have to worry about moonshiners after this." And my granddad said, "Okay, call me when you get them off the land." In the 1980s, my grandfather started to experience macular degeneration, and he lost the vision in one eye fairly rapidly. The second one, it was probably about 7 or 8 years later than when he started losing the vision in that eye. And I had the opportunity to play with him out in Sedona. That was a Robert Trent Jones course that he retired to. And his swing was a work of art. And he would get in a bunker and just watch him place that ball right next to the cup was wonderful. He had not too many years left after that of vision. But before he gave up his all of his vision, he sold his coin collection. And he was nationally known for his coin collection. He specialized in bust halves from the early 1800s, late 1700s. And most golf people don't know anything about my granddad's coin collecting. But one coin he discovered and bought for $5,000, he later sold in 2002 for $132,000. I don't know what it's worth today. But they still talk about my granddad in Coin World magazines. I'd like to tell you a whole lot of other stories about Fergie and my granddad, but I don't want to take up too much of your time. I will say that my granddad would be very pleased that his grandsons made it here. We don't know how you found us. My mother, Floyd's daughter, she passed away in July, and she very much wanted to be here. I think with the 2022 PGA championship coming to Southern Hills, my granddad would be pleased about that. He was a big fan of Perry Maxwell and Frank Lloyd Wright, incidentally. He admired both of those men very much. He was politically agnostic Okay, that means apolitical. Okay? He tried to stay away from politics, and I think he did a pretty good job. In all the decades I knew him, he would never tell us who he voted for. Can you imagine? I tell everybody. If he were here, I don't know what he would say in closing, except that he would be very appreciative and very happy. But he's also he was a very shy man. Many of you had the chance to know him professionally on the course. There was a different guy at the house. He was a very quiet, studious man. He dedicated so much time to his drawings. And I had a heart attack when they moved out to Sedona. I asked him, "Granddad, where are your drawings?" I threw them away. Yeah. Thank you very much.